Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to the video. The paid request, this time for Kenny. Thank you so much for that. If anyone wants to request any type of videos or topics, reactions, commentaries, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. I'll get to it as soon as I can. And this is for Mortal Remains, a 2013 film that I know I've seen once before. I might have even had a review, but then like the review, there was some audio issues, and it was one of those when I put the trailer up and it got blocked like a few months later. Because other people could show the entire movie and be fine, but if I show a 2-minute trailer 3-4 months later, sorry, it's blocked. But it gave me another chance to watch this film, and as I'm watching, I'm going, oh, I do remember this. Because the first hour and change I did like, but just like my thoughts back then, the finale was very disappointing. I just thought they could have been a lot more creative, a lot more inventive. Instead, they went the very typical cliche route for the third act, and I thought it felt, in a weird way, anticlimactic. Because the setup it's nothing new with the setup, but I do still like it. It's a mockumentary. In other words, a fake documentary where these two guys, Mark and Chris, they're actually making a documentary on the Blair Witch Project. They have Eduardo Sanchez, one of the directors of that film, involved, and he's being interviewed, and they're in the middle of making this doc. And while that's happening, Eduardo Sanchez goes, oh yeah, well, we're thinking of the legend and the history, and there's this one guy in Maryland, this historian. He started talking to us about this guy named Carl Atticus who would shoot these films, and he shot 2 films. One of them was Culture Shock and another was Mortal Remains, and this Mortal Remains movie was shown, and because it was shown, there were riots and all this other stuff, and then the film was lost. It was never seen again. And because it was never seen again, there's this mystery behind it. What is it? What was it about? Why did people go crazy and mad? Who is this filmmaker who apparently soon after ended his own life? And so they did a call from Eduardo Sanchez, goes, hey, I talked to some producers, and I mean, it's cool if you're making a documentary on Blair Witch Project, but, you know, they're saying that maybe this documentary on this guy could be beneficial to you. So these two guys, one's more gung-ho, one's not as gung-ho. The other's thinking about what the potential money it is. And then the first, like I said, hour and change, it's going into interviews. Interviewing crew members who worked on the first film, Culture Shock. And maybe a little bit of the second film. And the history of the director, and that he was a weird guy, and the rumors that he would use real dead bodies, and like it's trying to build a little bit of a history, a little bit of myth of who this director was. He was basing his movies on these books by this one guy called Vernon Blake, who dealt with the occult and dealt with symbols, and there were ciphers. And the two guys, Mark and Chris, they were okay. They were fine. Sometimes there's moments where you tell their acting is not the best, but I thought they were fine enough. I enjoyed the presentation, the editing, where it would show the history of our two leads, and it would show the short films they did. Like this short film from 1987 and another one from 1992, and the aesthetic and the way it's filmed seems like something that would be straight out of that. I don't know if they used their real short films and put it in here, which if that's the case, then that's actually works to the benefit, or maybe they just literally shot it like you would back in the day. And if that's the case, then they did a good job with the cameras they used, the aesthetic they used. That, wow, this does seem like a shot on video film from 1987. This does seem like a shot on camcorder bit from 1992. It looked legitimate enough. Same with, there are times that they interview people, but then they'll have, like, for example, there was a riot when that second film is shown, and there's archival footage of the riot and people screaming and trying to talk to a reporter trying to talk to people. I did appreciate the aesthetic. And it kept me intrigued, kept me pulled in of where this was going, what's the story of this film, and sort of the hints where, for example, the second film, like the crew members would say, it was a bit weird where the DP and the director would get us to set up the shots and tell us to leave, and when we come back the next day, the actors would not come back, and we're wondering, well, what's the deal? Or did they do it in one take? And I'm sitting there going, yeah, that's a bit weird. I would have, if it was one actor, but each actor, not even like a goodbye, I'd be like, And then you see that there's missing persons for each one of these people. Which I guess the crew members didn't realize that part. But in the way it's put together, the mystery of what this film's about and how it relates to the books it's based on, and to me it worked better as a mockumentary, but like a more of a drama that could have been maybe a thriller aspect. And I do think that would have been the better suited for it. It trying to be scary and horror, I think, was its shortcomings. Because I don't think it's scary. I don't think it's creepy. The few bits of it kind of, to be some of the weaker parts. It was more when they're interviewing people and doing the world building of this. Again, it's not the most original. I mean, there was another one that did that called Fury of the Demon, which was about this cursed film that was lost. So they're both films about a movie that was lost. No one could find it. When it was shown, there was a riot. Although Fury of the Demon is trying to be a bit more supernatural. Well, maybe it's trying to do with this. I know there was it wasn't found footage or mockumentary, but Cigarette Burns with John Carpenter. As I said, there's other movies about a movie that was shown and people rioted and it's missing and it's lost and can we find the film? Can we do that? But I'm a sucker for the idea. So even though it's not the most original, even though it's been done before, I'm curious to see what you could do with this. And the fact that the ending just becomes a big letdown, I thought hurt it a bit. Like Fear of the Demon, I didn't love it, but I liked it. And that's the thing. I think the first hour of this feels a bit stronger than the first hour of Fear of the Demon. Where Fear of the Demon felt a bit more cold. I don't want to say like a documentary supposed to be, even a fake one. This, I didn't mind it, but there's a bit more that I thought here it was showcasing when we're interviewing. Maybe like the people being interviewed, some have a little bit more life to them. But at least Fear of the Demon, I would say I liked more as a film altogether, because I thought the ending fit with the rest of it, as simple as it is. Here, like I said, the attempts of being scary, I thought was kind of the lesser parts. Like there's a bit when they go into a cemetery and the cameraman, I forget if it's Mark or Chris, one of them gets beaten up. The kind of meteor-looking guy gets beat up. And he says he's gone, he's not coming back. I actually think it would have been interesting if he never did come back and he left for good. I just think that would be funny. The guy like uses common sense. He's like, I've had enough of this, I'm gone, goodbye. I thought that worked well, and the taking of Deborah Lodian. Even though I don't love Paranormal Activity 3, I thought that was one of the more memorable bits. Where the guy's like, fed up, I'm done, just left, never came back. I'm like, wow, common sense for the win for that guy. It just makes me believe in the reality of it more. But the guy comes back eventually, and by this point they've added a third person. This guy, I think his name was Josh. And so it's the three of them looking a bit more into the delve deeper. And they get these warnings, like there's a guy at the cemetery in the daytime saying you should leave. At one point, they meet this guy who, I think he says there's a crime photographer, but it's supposed to be on the hush hush, but our leads are recording, saying you need to just leave things be. Granted, in that scene, I'm sitting there going, why do you give the guys a bit more details? Because when you're so vague, that makes them more curious. When they make them more curious, then they don't want to not leave things alone. Just say, if you do this, they're going to try to kill you. There you go. Just be blunt about it. But the guys like being so vague, like, don't just say it. If you don't do this, more likely they're going to kill you. I don't know who they are, but your life's in danger and they're going to kill you. Just say that, blunt. Then maybe it would wake some people up. Don't be so wishy-washy. So, that one guy, I don't even know if he had a name. He pissed me off. It's like you're purposely making them more intrigued as to what's going on here. Like I said, some of the details I enjoyed, like when they see footage of the first film, Culture Shock, they talk to a guy who knows a bit about video and says, well, maybe we do your bootleg, but it would be like a Japanese bootleg. Which then you see the footage and the subtitles are hard printed in it, like a lot of those Japanese bootlegs back in the day. There's a little bit of dialogue when the guy is explaining why he's not going to do this anymore. He's like, why don't you try getting your ass kicked? And the other guy goes, well, listen, there's 3 of us now, and hey, we'll go kick his ass. We'll go kick that guy's ass if he comes by again. So it's nothing that's going to change and raise the bar in terms of this kind of filmmaking. But again, it was interesting enough, it was intriguing enough to maybe go, okay, where's this going? But I think the third act, again, the spoilers, if it was more like Lake Mungo or Butterfly Kisses, well, I do think those films better stuck the landing. I think Lake Mungo, like this should have had more of a Lake Mungo feel, where the whole thing plays off as a drama. Can't really say thriller, but drama with some little horror, supernatural overtones. But by the end, a family's ready to move on, but then you find out things are not exactly what they are, which makes it a bit more sad. Not depressing like everybody dies, but just if you've seen the film, you know what I mean. There's a little bit of tragic element, but at the same time, some people are moving on. And they're going to move on with their lives, but there's a certain tragedy. Like, it just made it a bit more potent. It was a nice different direction, much more subtle. And that's why I think a film like Lake Mungo was much better compared to this. Butterfly Kisses, I thought they really stuck the land to the mythology and how certain characters, how their arc ended, and then possibly with some characters maybe did again. And I don't want to get too much into them to spoil those movies. I just thought those movies stuck the landing better compared to this. Just by the ending of this film, how do I put it? They have that meeting with that guy. They seem more gung-ho about this. And one thing leads to another. They get this information. There's thoughts that maybe the director did not end his life back in the day, so maybe that director is still around. And it seems more likely that's the case. Granted, I'm sitting there going, well, what has the director been doing all these years and decades? That would be the question at hand, but... And also, there's a lot of stuff that is left up in the air that they didn't really go into explaining. And let me get back to that in a minute. So then the 3 of them go to this house that's supposed to be the director's house. And they walk around, and it doesn't seem like they find a whole lot of creepy stuff. Like this little, but compared to a lot of other movies, I just don't think, it wasn't really that creepy or scary or horrific. Just because if it was, then you'd have to be a complete utter dumbass to not stop things. But it's like, well, we can't have things too creepy. We can't have things too scary. We can't have things too wild that they find. Otherwise, the audience would even more immensely hate the characters for not calling the cops or not just dropping things and such. So it's like, no, they're looking around. It's just a very dusty, dilapidated house in the middle of nowhere. It's at nighttime. Which then I'm thinking, why go at night? Why don't you just go during the day? If it's a house that's empty, supposedly, just go during the day so you can actually see if there's people around you. But it gotta be more spooky, so at night. And they find some cipher carvings. The director takes a, well, one of the guys takes a picture of it. They hear footsteps. The three go back in the car. They drive away. There's people in sheets. They look like the Ku Klux Klan, to be honest, but they're just people in sheets. One of the people deciphers what the cipher means. The message says, and this is spoilers, at my father's grave. The three go there. Someone does leave. The newer guy, Josh, he just puts the camera down and he leaves, and we never see him again. So okay, that did make me chuckle. I missed that the first time, I guess because, I don't know. I think by the third act, my mind was wandering, going, okay, I have a feeling where this is going, and it's not going to be as unique or as inventive or as creative as it could have been. And so I just missed that the first time. So our two, Mark and Chris, they dig up this grave. They find these film canisters. They go back home. They see that they got the film. They talk to a guy. They're driving. Their car gets hit. They wake up. And for 6 minutes, it felt like it went on forever. That's another thing that killed the ending. Not only was it predictable, not only was it, because I'm just like, okay, what's the lamest ending? Okay. Well, I predicted that when I first saw this. It's like a camera that looks like security footage, and you don't really hear much dialogue. And it'll cut to like a homemade like a handheld camera. It cuts back and forth between them. The two guys are tied up. One gets killed. The other gets put on the ground. You see cutting a bit of the face, tearing the face off. It's this figure doing it with like a skull mask. Almost as if they stole the skull mask from Halloween 3, Caesar the Witch. And the movie's over. And this goes on for like 6 minutes. So that just any amount of suspense you could have gotten just really lets the air out of the tires. Lets the air out of the tires. That's really what it did. It lets the air out of the film and leaves room for, I guess, a sequel, which I looked up. Apparently they're working on a sequel, but yet they've been working on it since like what, 2019, and it's 2024. I'm like, so it's been what, 5 years? How long do you don't work on the sequel? And will anyone care? Because most people watching, except Kenny and me, are not going to know what the hell this movie was. I think Guillermo, another guy who's into found footage, me and Kenny, probably the only three that know what the hell this movie is. And also, what would be the point of a sequel? The point of this was about, what's this director about? What's going on? You now know that more than likely the director's alive and killed all these people, or the two people here, for their little snuff film. Now, I guess maybe you see the stuff that leaves out, which I get. When I said before that not a lot of stuff is explained, this whole stuff with the occult, did he make a deal with the devil, or is he just a big fan of the cult and says, I'm going to do these sacrifices, or is he just doing this because, hey, I did to make a snuff film, it's for the giggles? If that was the 70s, and this was, I mean, the movie came out in 2013, but I don't know when the movie's supposed to take place. The same year, I don't know. Let's say it is. That's if it's 70, 1970 some. So that's potentially 40 years later. So you guys, what, 67 years old doing all this stuff? And all these cult members, like, how did all these people get to be part of the cult? They all want to make a film too? Was the one guy at the cemetery being pissed off at them? Is he a part of the cult? Or did he know that this is bad juju, bad feeling about it? Don't poke your head in. What has the director been doing since then? It didn't look like there was anything supernatural to it. So it just looked like a bunch of people. But is it supposed to be? And that's why people went crazy when the film came out. The second film, Mortal Remains. When that came out and people rioted, was because it was such an awful film. He did a shit job. It's like when people watch Adventures of Pluto Nash, or I think of the Robot Chicken, when the box office numbers of Pluto Nash, and then everybody jumps out the window and off the roof of the building. It's a fun Robot Chicken skit. Or it's like, oh my god, this is so horrific, or the gore, which maybe you're supposed to assume that was a snuff film. It leaves a lot of questions up in the air, and is going to try to answer those in a sequel? For people that really like this film, would they want those questions answered? I don't know. I mean, there's been other like fake documentaries I've enjoyed. Population Zero is more of a drama. Horror in the High Desert, I liked. There's a second film, I didn't mind it but I didn't like it as much as the first. This, let's say the first hour, bit of an interesting bit of world building, but I think it didn't really offer much in terms of answers. It didn't really offer much in terms of all this piece of information has been revealed, and now that makes me intrigued to see more of this world, or more of this case, or more of this transgressions of these characters. No. I don't know if the director thought that this guy with the skull mask was going to be like a new icon. If so, it failed badly. Because you barely see the thing. You barely see the mask. Very, very little. The two leads are okay. I mean, they're fine, I guess. But as you can tell, I'm being wishy-washy on their performances, because there are certain moments, like there's a point where the guy with the glasses who wanted to leave, he comes back with the enticement of money, but then he seems like more gung-ho than the other guy. Like, he's even more pushing to interview people, and when people close their doors, oh, come on, why don't you answer the door? Come on, we just want to ask one question. He's much more aggressive. There's a point where they go to see John Waters, the director. Now, we never see him, we never hear him. They just go, they're going to see John Waters. And secretary or whatever pretty much tells them to leave. And they're like, that guy's trying to bang on the door. Come on, we just want to ask some questions. I'm like, why is that guy now so aggressive and so assertive and so blunt in his responses? He was the guy that was beaten up. He was the guy who seemed more meager. He was the guy that wanted to stay away from here and not do this anymore. Now with the enticement money, now all of a sudden you do like a 180 and you're so gung-ho and assertive. It didn't really track for that character. You don't get a whole lot of other character development other than the fact they made a couple short films back in the day. There's not a whole lot of rapport between the two. Not a whole lot of funny or potentially entertaining rapport. One of the few is the one I mentioned. Like, you tried getting your ass kicked. Well, there's three of us, so we'll go kick his ass if he does. I wish there was a bit more of that. I wish there was a bit more rapport, a bit more comedic dialogue between the two, or giving each other crap, or giving each other sarcastic replies or quips. The few bits of trying to be suspenseful, I think they could have done a bit better. Again, one's in the dark, and a guy runs up and beats the one guy up. That's pretty much the most he did in the first hour. But like I said, I liked the setup of the story, the backdrop, the trying to learn about these two films that were made, and seeing bits and pieces of the footage and again the interviews with the crew members and learning more about the story of the making these films and what more this type of guy this director was, and that these actors may have been used as a stuff film and were never seen again, and creates like a nice like urban legend feel to the whole proceedings. But it just made for a lackluster ending. Going, that's it. That's what it was all leading up to. It's like, well, we're mostly a drama, mystery, maybe a little bit of thriller. We gotta remember we're a horror film, folks. We're a horror film, so we gotta get some gore and a face peeled off, and take 6 minutes to tell these two guys, which was 6 minutes too long. And there's really nothing anything creative or inventive about it. It's like, whatever. Not a whole lot of answers are answered. Not a whole lot of questions aren't answered. Didn't discombobulate it. It just wasn't for me. If it's for you, good on you. But like I said, Fury of the Demon, Lake Mungo, Butterfly Kisses, Savage Land. There's a lot of other better either mockumentaries or films of that nature that I'm much more preferred. With that said, thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye for now.